In this edition of RIN TV, the U.S. Supreme Court okays affordable care legislation. Simon Marks reports from Washington. Bob Hartwig assesses its impact. The UK Supreme Court sides with a lying claimant, and a 60-second global roundup of headlines affecting the industry. All this and more. You're watching World Risk and Insurance News on RIN TV. Hello, I'm Marisa Christian, and here's what's happening in the world of insurance. The waiting is over. The Supreme Court ruled on U.S. affordable care legislation, and many were surprised by the outcome. We begin our team coverage with this report from Simon Marks in Washington, D.C.
It has been a while since the steps of the Supreme Court have seen anything like it. A carnival atmosphere greeted the 9 justices, with supporters of President Obama's signature healthcare legislation rhetorically battling it out with his opponents. But on this day in Washington, the only opinion that mattered was the legal ruling handed down by the court. And by 5 votes to 4, the justices delivered Barack Obama a major political victory. The court's decision put the Republicans on the defensive. They, and even many Democrats, were expecting the court to rule against at least part of the president's plan. So President Obama can take comfort in the fact that the U.S. Supreme Court has deemed his healthcare legislation constitutional. The court did throw the Republicans a bone. It redefined the so-called individual mandate, the law which forces some people to buy health insurance, as a tax. Demonstrators were quick to seize on that and back calls for the legislation's complete repeal. Historians will look back on the court's ruling as further evidence that the judicial branch of government is predictable only in its unpredictability. Simon Marks, World Risk and Insurance News, Washington.
If you'd like to see more of Simon Marks' report, visit our on-demand library. We continue our coverage of the Supreme Court ruling with reaction from the insurance industry. We spoke with Dr. Robert Hartwig from the Insurance Information Institute. He was recently named a living legend by National Underwriter magazine. Here are highlights of our discussion. Dr. Hartwig, welcome back.
Very glad to be here.
So, Bob, can you summarize the ruling by the Supreme Court?
Effectively, what the court did is uphold the Affordable Care Act as passed by Congress in 2010. So basically, the most controversial issue, that of the individual mandate, which many conservatives had argued was unconstitutional, was in fact upheld by the Supreme Court. And if you decide that you're not going to purchase insurance, that in fact there will be a penalty if you don't make that purchase. Well, this is in fact a tax.
How will the Supreme Court ruling impact the insurance industry?
It is effectively compulsory coverage. And this means more business for healthcare insurers. Everybody is going to be a customer. And the idea is that, well, there will be healthy people in the pool and there will be people who aren't healthy. There will be people with no conditions and people with pre-existing conditions. And so the idea is that since it's compulsory, these costs will be spread across hundreds of millions of people. I think now that the fog is cleared with the Supreme Court decision, we're going to begin to hear a lot of announcements by managed care providers and others about how they are going to restructure their business begin 2014. There's little direct impact for property casualty insurers. However, when the Act is fully implemented in 2014 and beyond, on net, there is a slight positive benefit. The reason for that is it should diminish cost shifting into workers' comp. I believe this should also benefit the liability portion of private passenger auto coverage and maybe liability portions of some other coverages as well. We're nowhere near that. Ultimately, there could be medical malpractice reforms put into place that would be good news for med-mal insurers. Ultimately, disability insurers will likely benefit as well.
Dr. Hartwig, thank you so much for joining us.
It's very much my pleasure to be here.
If you'd like to see more of my discussion with Dr. Hartwig, including his assessment of what the healthcare legislation means to individuals and businesses, visit our on-demand library. The UK Supreme Court ruled that a man who faked the extent of injuries from a workplace accident should still collect the genuine part of his claim. Zurich presented surveillance video proving the worker's claim was substantially fraudulent. And while the High Court admitted he was a liar, it still ruled the claimant was entitled to $88,000 of the £838,000 he tried to collect. Zurich was disappointed by the decision. There was news outside the courtroom this week. Here are other headlines from the global insurance industry. Widespread flooding, power outages, and landslides in the UK affected thousands after one of the wettest Junes on record. U.S. Congress passed a 5-year extension of the National Flood Insurance Program. Record wildfires in Colorado will result in hundreds of millions of dollars in insured losses. Swiss Re reports non-life premiums grew in 2011 despite a decline in overall premiums worldwide. JLT says there is no doubt we are generally talking about a potential move to a harder insurance market. And AIG will resume using its brand name to recognize the company's turnaround. If you'd like more information on the topics in our global roundup, visit our on-demand library. That's all for now. I'm Marisa Christian. Join us next time for more world risk and insurance news on RIN TV.